when they dance, they be saying, ow. We cut back over to Smoke. So Smoke has settled everything in town with Bo and Grace. They have agreed to help. They load up their stuff. They say goodbye to their daughter. Smoke also, something I forgot to mention, is that the two gentlemen that he pew-pewed shot when they were trying to break into his truck, he paid, I believe, Grace or Bo. He paid one of them to stitch those men up. So he's not just out here being an outlaw for outlaw's sake. You know, it's what did Omar say? Wire reference. Got to have a code. And so I think for Smoke, it's like, you ain't gonna just come over here doing what you want to do. You ain't gonna go back talking about how you almost got off or you almost robbed the twins, but scoot out the street, put some pressure on your wound, and I'm gonna pay for you to get patched up. So I mean, something to be said for that. But we cut to Smoke going over to a small shack, and outside that shack there's a small grave situation. There's a couple of pieces at the grave. There's a rock with a handprint on it. He sets some flowers down and he says, Papa's here. This is the burial ground for Smoke and Annie's infant daughter who passed away.
Papa's here.
Smoke goes inside, and Annie, who is his love interest, actually, before he goes inside, she comes out and she greets him. Mind you, just like Mary seeing Stack, this is Annie's first time seeing Smoke in 7 years. It's fair to assume that their child would have been 7 or 8 years old had they lived. So he's been gone that whole time. He asked her how she's doing. Her response is beautiful, and I want to try using it in my everyday life. No misery's worth complaining about. He comes inside the shack. She greets two little girls who are coming in to purchase some items from her. Annie is a spiritualist. Annie practices hoodoo. So she has different, and forgive me for my ignorance, I'm not all too familiar with hoodoo. I understand what it is. I also understand that it is a practice that is passed down. And unfortunately, in my family, no one has passed it down to me. So I don't know the ins and outs of hoodoo. But I do know it was a practice that our ancestors practiced to keep us safe. There was a lot of spirituality and prayer and ancestry that went into it, from my understanding. And so she sells them some items and they pay with it looks like it's and pardon the callousness, but it looks like monopoly money, right? It's not real like USD tender money. It is, quote unquote, it's plantation money. It is the wages that they're paid that they can use in particular areas. So they can use them at certain stores to purchase goods and that kind of thing. And she accepts that. On first glance or first watch, when Smoke comes in and he's like essentially kind of making fun of Annie or dismissing it comes off like he's dismissing her hoodoo practice, when that's not the case. He's dismissing the money, the quote unquote fake money that's being used. And for her, it's like, this money works for me. I don't know what's attached to your money. So, they get into a little back and forth, and she brings out her switchblade, like, I will cut you if you try to take what's mine. So it's an interesting dynamic between the two of them. And then it gets quiet because there's a lot that needs to be said between them, but there's a lot that in their stillness that's said just in how they look at one another. She gave Smoke a mojo bag that he wears around his neck, and I imagine it has different herbs and different things that she has put together and prayed over and conjured over in order for him to be safe. And he's had it on for at least the past 7 years. And, she said, it kept you and your fool brother safe, kept y'all safe in the trenches in Germany, kept y'all safe running around in Chicago. And he kind of says back, well, why couldn't it help our baby? And he's not saying it to be mean. He's literally like, he doesn't fully understand it, but because he believes in her, he believes in what she is talking about. But he's just like, why couldn't it save our baby? And her response isn't defensive, isn't, you don't know, blah, blah, blah. It's literally like, I don't know. Because she probably tried. I don't know what happened with the baby. I don't know if the baby was sick. But what I also love in this scene is that you see her take the mojo bag and she's refreshing the mojo bag. He sits in the corner and he smokes a pipe. So smoke is in the corner and you see the smoke coming off his pipe. Then you see Annie on the other side refreshing the mojo bag and you see smoke. Well, she lights a match and there's smoke coming from her side. They're connected through the smoke. And she prays and she anoints the mojo bag. She refreshes the mojo bag and he opens up to her. She kind of gives him a look, and when she says his name, Elijah, she can draw the real him out of that. Not that smoke and mirrors, but the real him. And so he's kind of like, okay, you gonna make me say it? He said, I miss you. And it's hard for him to come back there because grieving the loss of their child, because of their reputation and everything that's tied together with their father, and because it probably pains him to see her, but he misses her and he loves her. So she comes over and she embraces him and she wraps her arms around him and his head falls into her bosom. Okay. So Annie, what I love about Annie, what I love about Wumi Musaku, who if you don't know, Wumi Musaku was in Lovecraft Country. That's where I first saw her. Was blown away by her performance, and she was in this movie on Netflix called His House, which was really scary. She has such a power to her in how she appears on screen and how she embodies the characters that she plays. She embraces him. He falls into her bosom. And then from there, she's like, shit, my man back. Puts her hand around his neck. Then she puts her hand on his crotch. And she says and I don't know what language, I've heard Yoruba, I've heard Creole, but she says in a different language, your body ain't forget me. Listen. It was on from there. They get it on right there in that shack. She turns around. He lifts her skirt. He enters her. They get it on from that point, and then they go off together because she has agreed to make food for the opening of Club Juke. So they're off. They're going to the club so that they can get everything set up. Then we abruptly cut to a man seemingly falling from the sky. He's got steam, smoke coming off of these wounds that are on him. That's Remick. Remick, played by Jack O'Connell, is an at least 1,500-year-old vampire. We don't know this at this point. We just know, okay, where the hell did he come from? Why does he have these flaming, smoking blisters on him? What is his problem? His story that he tells Bert and Joan, who are the occupants of the home, who are, Bert is part of the clan. He tells them that the Choctaw Native Americans are chasing him and took his wife and all of this. He's giving them a sob story because he needs to be let in. And another thing I really love. Oh my God. Okay. I'm about to talk about vampires real quick. because what I really loved is Ryan Coogler sticking to the lore of vampires and all the things that come with vampires. I am someone who was very, very, very much into vampire culture in the 2010s, thanks to True Blood and Vampire Diaries, and even to a small degree Twilight. I wasn't that into Twilight, but I definitely was into Vampire Diaries. I definitely was into True Blood. True Blood was my show. And the vampire lore of, you know, they can't be out in the sun. They have to be let in. Silver and garlic. Like, well, in True Blood, garlic wasn't a big thing, but silver was. It like kind of disabled them a little bit. He had to be let in. He had to be invited in their home. So he's bringing up this sob story. He sees the clan robe and he's trying to appeal to their racism in order to be let in. But in reality, Remick is a very old vampire. He's at least 1500 years old. And from what I understand, from what I know about vampire lore, is the older you are, the more fortitude you have as a vampire, which is why he didn't immediately combust. Even though the sun was setting, the sun was still out. He didn't immediately combust because he's such an old vampire. Oh, and also another lore, of course, is a stake to the heart. And they'll meet the, as Bill Compton would call, the true death, is what they used to call it on True Blood. So they would meet the true death with a stake to the heart. In True Blood, they would kind of like burst open like balloons. It was really strange. But anyway, he gets let in. Shortly after that, you see the Choctaw natives are looking for him. And it's not quite, like, the sun is not quite completely down, but it's about to be nighttime. They come to the door. Joan comes with the shotgun.
We're in pursuit of someone very dangerous. He might have come onto your property. Have you seen anyone recently?
I hope you ain't let him in your house. She ain't trying to hear nothing they gotta say. So he's like, all right, lady, God bless you. They go on their merry way. We don't hear from them the rest of the movie. Joan goes upstairs looking for her husband. It's quiet. And we see her husband laid out on the floor, Remick sitting in the chair. There's a baby crib in there. I've heard a lot of theories. I've heard some people be like, oh, there was a baby. He ate the baby. And then I've heard theories that, the baby crib was there because maybe Joan and Bert were trying for a baby. Either way, moot point. Vampires cannot have babies. They cannot impregnate humans either. So the husband wakes up. He is now turned. He is now vampire, and they are about to turn Joan. And we zone in on Remick and his eyes. And that was another thing I thought was a good touch, is the different eye colors for all the different like races of vampires. You notice Bo had different eye color from the vampires who were black, from Remick whose eyes are red. Joan and Bert, I think their eyes were green. So that was a nice touch. We cut over to Club Juke. They getting the lights set up. They getting everything together for the grand opening. They got Cornbread watching the door. They got Delta Slim on piano. The brothers are there setting everything up, and it's gonna be a real ring a ding ding. And you see a lot of the people who were at the train station, a lot of the sharecroppers who probably met their quota for the day, all make their way to come kick back, have a good night. The Smokestack twins are back in town. What they got going on? Oh, there's a juke joint. Let's hear some good music. Let's eat some good catfish. I heard they had Italian wine and Irish beer. Let's check it out. But Smoke has a problem because there they go paying with that fake money again. He's not happy about that. He's not happy about that. Stack smooths it over because Stack is the smooth talker. So he smooths it over. But Smoke's not happy. He's very much more business minded. That's why he wanted to kind of wait. He wanted to, see things out a little bit more. He was teaching the little girl about negotiation. He's more business minded, and he's like, these plantation coins are not going to make us a profit. And Annie and Stack are talking to him like, hey man, it's not a big deal. We find out that apparently Stack in Chicago was a pimp. It's funny because the way it's worded would have you think that Stack himself was up there pimping himself out, which is quite possible. But I think it's more believable that Stack was actually pimping out women, and he was making income from doing that as well. So anyway, Perlene comes. She saunters over to young Sammy, and he's excited to see her. She's excited to see him. Well,
We'll see where the night takes us.
but then there's a little bit of trouble afoot because Mary shows up. And at first, Cornbread did not recognize her. He tells her, ma'am, I think, I don't think you should be here. I think you're lost. And then she's like, Cornbread. And he recognizes her. So these are people, they all grew up together. So, like, Cornbread, Mary, the Smokestack twins, Annie, um, they're all like around the same age. They probably all known each other at various points in life. So Cornbread knows her, gives her a hug. She comes in. Sammy excuses himself from talking to Perline because he's got to run some damage control. He's here with the twins. Mary can care less. Boy, if you don't get the fuck out of my way. But then she's like, you're little Sammy. And she buys him a drink because she grew up with the Smokestack twins. She knows that they had a little cousin. She's probably known Sammy since he was a little boy, maybe like running around trying to keep up with the twins. So they're talking. And keep in mind, Mary is mourning her mother. She just buried her mother. She's upset because it seems like Smoke and Stack didn't care. And Smoke comes in and he's basically like, we gave her flowers while she was living. Like, I don't know what you want us to do, especially since it would have been dangerous for them to essentially show up to that funeral. No, because the mother, I think it's safe to say the mother was a white passing woman, even though she had a biracial father. So it's possible her biracial father maybe looked more black, but then the biracial father likely married a white woman, had Mary's mother, and she probably didn't look black at all. And then you get to Mary, who also does not look black. Smoke wants Stack to handle Mary. Get her out of here. It's a problem. Stack's like, I'm gonna handle her. I'm gonna handle her. He don't know how to handle her because she got a smart ass mouth, just as smart as his. She says she gonna smack every bitch up in there because he taught her how to fight. Get a little bit more with Mary and Stack. They have a touching moment. Stack really does love her. You could tell he loves her, but Stack is living that fast life. He just kind of wants to do his thing. And so, even though he loves her, in his eyes, protecting her is all right. You go off, you go get married, you forget about me, you get married with your white man. That way you can maintain your status as a white woman, even though we know the truth of your lineage. They don't have to know. And that way you'll be set. Because if you notice, like Mary was very well dressed, very put together, even that little outfit she had at the train station. And shout out to Ruth E. Carter. Ruth E. Carter is an Oscar winning costume designer. She did the looks for this movie, of course. She did Black Panther. She also used to work a lot on a lot of Spike Lee projects for the costuming for those films. So she is a giant in that field. And it was just really nice because you see how everybody's looks kind of inform who they are, whether it be someone like Cornbread, who they plucked him fresh off of the plantation he was working on, so he's got his overalls and his hat. And you see a lot of other gentlemen that are also in overalls. These are sharecroppers, these are workers. You see Sammy, who has very kind of muted colors like brown and white. But then in contrast to Smoke and Stack, and I saw Ryan Coogler did an interview on the blue carpet for the recent Met Gala where the theme was dandyism, and Smoke and Stack are dandies. Like the way they dress, just really taking back expression and just like really dressing up. And he mentioned that Stack not only dresses himself, he dresses Smoke as well. And I can imagine if it were up to Smoke, he would just wear something practical and very comfortable. But Stack is like, no, we're men of status, so we gonna dress up, we gonna have these accessories, these chains, these fronts, because Smoke, even though you don't really see him smile too much in this movie, but when you do see him smile, he does have like a gold tooth or, something in there. And then Stax is like right in the front. Okay. And I also found it interesting too. A lot of people pointed out how Stack very much the way he dresses emulates the Italians, and then Smoke is more so taking from the Irish, just in the differences between the outfits and the hats even. And Smoke looks a little bit more stocky than Stack. Stack looks more slender. Smoke looks more stocky, even though they're both like built similarly. They both are muscular. They're both played by Michael B. Jordan, of course, but just the way that they're dressed. And so that's very interesting. Annie, who wears a lot of blue, a lot of teal, she kind of mirrors Smoke with his blue. But also, and you're gonna see Annie mention what's called a haint. And a haint, from what I understand, is something that attaches to your spirit. And in the South, they have a lot of like that teal, turquoise, like blue to that color. Something about that color like repels haints. And so you'll see that color in um architecture, you'll see it in clothing. And so her necklaces had kind of that color in it, so I thought that was a really nice touch. And then Mary wears a lot of white, or well, she wears white when we first see her, and then when she comes to the party, she's wearing like that dusty kind of rose silk dress. And then towards the end, when she gets into everything, it's covered in blood. And so the red, the white, the pink, the red, white and red mixed to make pink. And all of those match Stack. I love this damn movie. So anyway, getting back to um Stack and Mary, we have a scene between them. Smoke had encouraged Stack to, hey, she got to go. Stack is taking orders because he looks up to Smoke as his big brother, but also as a father figure. So he's trying to get Mary to leave, but Mary's like, "No, I'm not going nowhere." She very much, I feel like she wants an explanation why you got up and left after 7 years, like what's going on for 7 years. And then she very much loves him, and she is able to get a confession out of him,
I love you. I think about you every day.
but wants to keep her safe. He understands the ramifications of her staying, which could possibly bring trouble to them, because even though they know her lineage, on the outside looking in, ma'am, you are white, okay? And you up in the black club, all right? That's how that looks. So you can get them caught up, but also you could get caught up. It's Sammy's turn to sing, and Delta Slim has become a mentor for Sammy. As Sammy's getting ready to sing, Delta Slim kind of stops him, like, "No, tell him who you are."
Hold on. Tell me who you are. Where you from?
So basically, introduce yourself. Tell us why we should care about what you got to say. So he introduces himself.
I'm Sammy Moore.
My name is Sammy Moore. I'm a sharecropper, but everyone called me Preacher Boy on account of my father being a pastor. I wrote this song for him, and Sammy starts off singing.
Something I've been wanting to tell you for a long time.
And what he has to say to his father is basically telling his dad he lied to him. When he was a boy, 8 years old, his dad gave him a Bible on that old Mississippi road. I love you, Papa. You did all you could do. They say the truth hurts, so I lied to you. Yes, I lied to you. I love the blues. He's had to suppress his love for the blues his entire life because his father wants him in the church. He wants him using his gift of music for the kingdom. And that's a whole nother discussion. Because I swear, you can't have a talent or an interest or a love. And if you're not using that talent, interest, and love to uplift the church and the kingdom of Christ, you might as well not have it when it comes to a lot of church folk. And it sounds like that was Sammy's dad. And I love how Sammy says, there's a lyric where he says, I'm full of the blues and holy water too. They're both in him. Just because he loves the blues doesn't mean that he doesn't recognize his foundation of coming up in the church. And something Delta Slim also says to Sammy is, basically how white people indoctrinated enslaved Africans into Christianity. And they used scripture in order to excuse slavery and to further oppress the enslaved Africans. He said, but the blues we brought from home. Like, that's ours. We brought that from Africa here. That was already in us before the white man put all that other stuff in us. And as Sammy is singing and as he's getting transfixed by the music, the scene warps. You see a man come up playing an electric guitar. The music can conjure and transform the past and the future. We see another young man on the turntables. Preacher boy. We see a ballet dancer, some NYC B-boys. We see some LA Crips, Crip walking. We see some down south girls twerking. And even when you cut to Grace and Bo, who are Chinese, people that represent their culture and their dance. During Preacher Boy Sammy's song, Somebody Take Me in Your Arms Tonight. So good. But anyway, it's Annie who's talking about conjuring people from the past and future. And that's what we see in that scene. Like, I would watch that scene on a loop. It's very powerful. You see how music, blues music in this, particularly in this movie, has really transcended the test of time over the centuries of our expression through music and the different variances. And it all came from this one song of this young man singing about, you know, letting his dad know, I love blues music. And you see the scene from the outside, Remick, Joan, and Bert coming up, and they see the juke, but they see the roof on fire, all the walls gone. And I love it. I love how that looks because you see everybody on the inside dancing. You see Sammy singing and Cornbread sitting at the front watching the door. And Remick is transfixed by Sammy's voice because he understands the power of transformation and connection that Sammy's voice has, and he wants it for himself. He wants it to reconnect with his people. So Sammy sings a song, and then we see Sammy and Perlene. They're kissing, they're up on each other. And like I said, this is likely Sammy's first experience with a woman ever. Sammy is on the plantation. He's a sharecropper. That's what he do. That's where he's at. He's with his family. He's in his father's church. When is he gonna have time to be getting any coups? So he takes what his big cousin Stack taught him,
I want to try something.
and he tells Perlene that she's beautiful. And though she's feeling a little insecure because, she walked there and he doesn't let her wash up, he just wants to taste her. I swear, that's all we want to hear from y'all. And that's something I've noticed about men. Sidebar. That's just something I've noticed about men. We'll be the ones who are like, well, let me wash up, or, I drove all the way here. Let me wash up. They just want it. They don't care. I feel like even though she walked there and everything, I feel like she washed up before she left to come to the juke. And he didn't seem to be complaining about any um discomfort, any smells, any nothing. He found that button, as Stack said, as he listened by the door and heard Perlene enjoying herself. And then Grace, and he invites Grace to take a listen, and she's like, "What?" Hilarious. There's a lot going on at this party, or at this gathering at the, Club Juke, because Smoke has a conversation with Stack, and we find out they're not making a whole hell of a lot of money. A lot of the patrons are paying with the plantation coins, which can only be used in a few places. It's kind of, if you think about, like, if you go to like Chuck E. Cheese or Dave and Buster's and stuff, and you get, um, I don't even think they do tokens anymore, but you can't go into a regular store and spend Chuck E. Cheese tokens and get you a slice of pizza. But you can go into Chuck E. Cheese with those coins, and you can play some games and win you some tickets. And then you might go home with like a 30 ticket fidget spinner. So it's kind of that, where it's like these coins aren't real money. They're money that can be spent in the stores, but they're not money that we can use everywhere. And so that's the beef. Smoke is very business minded. This is why he wanted to wait. He's not happy about the money situation. Stack is feeling the pressure of him not being happy about the money situation. So, in the midst of all of this melee, Remick, Bert, and Joan come up to the juke, and they're talking to Cornbread. And Cornbread is like, we can't let them in. Stack and Smoke come to the front, and they're like, hey, we heard there was a party going on, and we want to come in. And they're just like, no, we don't know about that. Where y'all from? Because depending on where you from, if you from Arkansas, if you are men of status like Stack and Smoke, who have a reputation, and then even in the South, even if, damn, if you have a reputation or not, if you're in the South and there's some stuff going down in the South, and y'all know what I'm talking about, depending on where you're from, you can get caught up real bad. And that was something that was mentioned earlier, where Stack and Smoke, where they were talking to Sammy about opening Club Juke, and Sammy was talking about, or he was asking them about Jim Crow. He was asking them about their time in Chicago. Like, I heard there's no Jim Crow up there, and they're like, it's pretty much the same. It just look different in the North than it do down here. But racism is racism, and it's everywhere. He says, so that's why we decided to come back home, because we'll deal with the devil that we know. And so they come up, and Remick recognizes Sammy.
Must be that voice I heard from out here.
He was drawn to Sammy's voice, but not just his voice, the power behind his voice and what that could mean for Remick. Remick, who has been displaced from his people for all these years. I don't know what his story is. I don't know how he was made vampire. But like I said, he is a very old vampire. And something about Sammy's power behind his voice is something Remick very much wants to use for himself to reconnect with his people. So They pull out their instruments and they sing a little song, Pick Poor Robin Queen. And from what I understand, that's a real song and it was by a black artist, which is why you see Stack kind of entertaining it a little bit. He's like moving his head. I swear, Stack, I can't. Please, Stack, please. And so it's funny that they use that song to try to appeal to the black folk. And they got their little dance moves and stuff. I wonder if that's hive mind or if I wonder if like Remick had to rehearse with Joan and Bert like how to move the instrument around. But anyway, Smoke shuts all that down. No, no, no. There are white clubs up the road. Y'all go there. Like we just this is just for us. Y'all can't keep inviting everybody to the damn cookout. Remick. Which is funny because this is only ever something I've only ever seen black people do when they say us and they kind of like rub their hand, their skin, like, yo, we gotta we. So he's like, oh, is it because we're? But then he points to Mary and he's like, but how did she get in here? Because Mary is clearly white, even with her lineage. And so Mary starts to defend herself, but then Annie steps in and she's like, she family. So what of it? And so Remix, so then Smoke goes to pull out his piece, and then Remix like, okay, no, all right, you don't need to do that, sir. You know, we're gonna head up the road, but we're gonna walk really slow in case you change your mind. Y'all get y'all asses on. Anyway, we know they had no intention on really leaving, so they go back to the party. Whatever. Stack and Mary have a conversation because Stack is feeling the weight of them not bringing in a bunch of money. And remember, Stack is the one that wanted to open a week. He wanted to open that night. Smoke wanted to wait a week. And maybe if they would have waited a week, people would have had real money to use. Whatever. So I think he's feeling the pressure of Smoke's disappointment. So Mary's like, well, why don't I go out there and talk to them? And of course, Mary's trying to get on Stack's good side. She's trying to get back in Stack's good graces. She loves Stack. You know, they love each other. I know a lot of people had a lot of conversation about, oh, she's chasing him around. He don't want that girl, blah, blah, blah. Yes and no. I think he has a lot of love for her. But I think Stack is just, he's such a free spirit. He just kind of wants to do his thing and not worry about her. And then plus, it's 1932 Mississippi. She, despite having a half black great grandfather, for all intents and purposes, is a white woman living a white woman's life, married to a white man. If it were found out that she had black lineage, she could get hurt. If it were found out that he was taken up with her, he would most definitely get killed. Not just hurt, killed. That's why even when they were at the train station, he avoided eye contact with her because you couldn't look white women in the eyes. She agrees to go and talk to Remick because she's going to use her whiteness in order to appeal to them and see what they want and see if they have money. Because all y'all people here is paying with plantation money. So maybe the white people have real money to spend. And I really wonder, this is just a side note, and this wasn't even in my notes. Let's say Remick, Bert, and Joan were not vampires, okay? They were just white people who wanted to come to the party. And Mary's ass goes out there and brings them into the party. Like Smoke said, that still would have brought danger to them. What if somebody look at that white woman too long or somebody step on their foot or spill something on them? They go running back to their people. You can't risk it. But she used her whiteness to appeal to their whiteness. And I think that's why a lot of people are like, really, Mary? They're not feeling her. So anyway, she goes out there. They're singing a song. The actress who plays Joan has a very lovely voice. And so Mary's trying to talk to them. And was like mad comfortable, like being amongst them. She sits right next to Remick. She's among them. It's four white people having a conversation. And, Remick is talking to her about, love and peace and togetherness and, blah, blah, blah. And, you know, um, Mary discloses that she had just buried her mother, so she was feeling disconnected, which is why I feel like she kept trying to come around and be near Stack, because amongst Stack, amongst Smoke, amongst Annie, she felt that was her family. I don't know if Mary was an only child who didn't have a lot of relatives, but when you are mourning someone, when you lose someone, you try to be close to whoever, whatever semblance of family you have. And for her, it's Stack, Smoke, Annie. And so they're appealing to her over the loss of her mother and how they could be a family with her. She gets some bad vibes off of them. She never should have came out there. I think in her mind, she's like, yeah, this was a mistake. I never should have came out there. But it's too late because Remick is drooling. She got all this skin exposed. He's ready to bite. He's got this really gross, thick, thick piece of drool coming off the side of his mouth. And she sees it and she's like, yeah, I think y'all need to get going. I'm gonna go back in. And she makes the mistake of turning her back on them. I think even if she was looking at them, they still would have got her. But they did show her, or Remick showed her these gold coins. And you could tell this is not money that's used in their time. This is old money. This is old Irish money. So as she's walking back, we see Remick stand up and we see him levitate. He's an old vampire, and old vampires can fly. And then we cut to Perline. Listen, we got some liquor in Perline. Perline had her pearl polish by Sammy. She is feeling herself on this stage. She is crawling around. She's moving around. Pale moon. Getting it. Getting it. Sammy on the side, admiring her. Um, and so you see Mary kind of saunter on back to the party. She comes and Cornbread's like, wait a minute. I didn't even see you leave. What the fuck? And she's like, are you going to let me in? Well, sure. Yeah, come in. Because she was there before. But if you were there before, why I got to invite you in, Mary? First thing she does is she goes up to Stack. She shows him the coins. He's like, okay, we getting somewhere. And then she lays a big kiss on him. And he's like, wait a minute. He's looking around. He's seeing where Smoke is. Because he know he not supposed to be hooking up with her. But he can't help it. She's like, you can go and rob banks, but you can't rob me of this pussy. Yo, Mary she's something else. Take Stack into the back room and they start fucking. At the same time, there's a problem because there is a man who came in with some loaded dice because they were gambling. They had a roulette table, they had cards going on, they was gambling. The guy with the loaded dice had cut a guy across the face. And so they had to confront him. Smoke comes in, he wrestles the knife out of the guy's hand and he inspects the dice and then street justice. All right, y'all, go get him. And they all had to beat him up. And I love the juxtaposition of you hear the stomps from like the guys kicking old boy, but then you also hear Perline stomping across the stage, right? There was so much going on. You had Perline performing, you had those men beating up old dude, you had Smoke inspecting the guy who got cut. At that point, Cornbread needed to go use the bathroom, so he leaves the door unattended and he leaves Delta Slim. He leaves Delta Slim to watch the door. And Cornbread goes off, like way off, into the bushes somewhere to go pee. And as he's peeing, it's so funny because like every time he heard something, he would stop the stream and then it would get quiet and then he resume. And you hear Cornbread, cornbread. Is that cornbread? Oh, I want me some cornbread. That's Remick and them in the bushes. Peekaboo. We cut back to the party. Smoke is telling Sammy, yo, go get Stack. He opens the door. No, he goes to the door and he's asking Delta Slim, like, where's Stack?
Oh, yeah, he in the back. In the back there. Go ahead, you can go. Go ahead.
Hey, Stack, Smoke looking for you.
Opens the door. Mary is riding the hell out of him. Listen, that's one thing I can appreciate about the women in this movie. Like, it just goes to show, listen, our pleasure and our sexuality is just as important as yours. So Sammy, being young, is like, okay, well, I don't want to interrupt. He goes back. Smoke's like, I told you to get Stack. Where he at? Oh, I can't get him. He in there with his girl. And he's like, I don't care. I told you to go get him. He's like, well, I don't want to interrupt alone. So Smoke is like, fine, I'll go with you. They open the door, and at this point, Mary, being a baby vampire, mind you, and this is another thing I'll say. I already talked about vampires and everything. When you're a baby vampire, so think about like Jessica from True Blood. And especially if you're a baby vampire and your maker is not teaching you what to do, like Bill, like when because he had to make her a vampire. He was under duress when he made her a vampire. So he kind of didn't want to teach her how to be a vampire, but then he eventually became a good maker. But anyway, when you're a baby vampire, you're very hungry for blood. You notice Mary had a little bite mark on the back of her shoulder. It was small enough to where she could still cover it up with her dress and nobody noticed, but it was deep enough for her to be turned. The hole she bit into Stack's neck, the amount of blood, because she's a baby vamp and baby vamps be hungry when they first turn. And so he's sitting there, Stack is laying there, he can't move. Mary turns around, full of blood, vampire fangs. It's not what it looks like. Smoke, of course, like, blah, 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 blah. Smoke didn't want you here in the first place, bitch. And now you bit my brother, he bleeding on the ground, and you telling me it's not what it looks like? You gotta go. Well, that don't work on Mary because she starts laughing and she rises up, and the delivery of this line by Haley Steinfeld was perfect.
We ain't gonna kill every last one of you.
And then she runs out of the juke. And Stack is laying there, bleeding out. Smoke goes to him. He tries to put pressure on his wound, but like literally, this girl, carotid artery, all of it. Ain't no saving Stack at this point. And you hear Stack kind of saying his goodbyes to his brother, telling him, I love you. And then he expires. Smoke is sitting there holding him, completely in shock. Completely. Michael B. Jordan played this so beautifully because you think about it, this is a man who has kept his brother protected his entire life through being abused as children, through being in a literal war together and the things that they've seen and had to do while in that war, to running around in Chicago robbing banks. He's always had to have Stack's back. And the one thing that he thought could have potentially brought harm to his brother, but maybe isn't that harmful, Mary, was his ultimate demise. He couldn't protect him. He's dead. And the way Michael B. Jordan plays it with just his eyes looking bewildered and his breathing being labored and not knowing what to do, and kind of like looking to Annie almost for like guidance. And she tells Delta Slim, and Delta Slim comes in, and when he sees Stack dead, he like removes his hat. Sammy's crying. And so this is something that I realized too. And it makes me all the more sad. Annie says to Delta Slim, keep everybody out. That means keep everybody that's in the juke out of this room. I think Delta Slim, because he had been drinking all night and everything else, I think he heard kick everybody out. So what does he do? He closes the door and he says, "All right, y'all, night's over. Everybody gotta go." He kicks everybody out. So everybody starts to leave. Bo goes to go warm up the core. I love when we get to that. I really love his line delivery. But anyway, the guy that plays Bo Chow, and we see Sammy, and he's like, "It's my fault. I didn't do anything. I thought they were making love." And Annie is just like, "You can't put that blame on yourself." And he's like, "Is Stack really dead? Like, what's going on?" And Smoke is like, "You got a mojo bag for him? You got something that can help him?" And I don't even think he was, just like earlier when he was talking about why couldn't it save our baby. He wasn't being a smartass. He was genuinely asking. So even in this instance, his brother is dead on the ground, and he's asking Annie.
You got any magic to bring my brother back? Got a mojo bag for him?
I think it wasn't on some, "Oh, okay, you supposed to be this root worker. You got a mojo back for him." It was on some, "You got something that can bring him back or keep him alive?" And she didn't. Smoke is covered in Stack's blood, and one thing he says to Annie,
Best thing about me is him.
and I believe that. I think Stack, Smoke felt comfortable to like joke around. I felt there were maybe two, maybe three people in the world that Smoke could really be himself. He could be Elijah. He could be vulnerable with. And that was his brother Stack, Elias. And you hear Mary call him Elias before she lures him into that room. Annie, the love of his life, and his baby. So she asked Sammy, "Well, what did Mary say? Because this is Mary. We all know Mary. What? This is not, why would she do this? What did she say?" "We gonna kill every last one of you." We. That's when it clicks for Annie. "We need to take your brother's body outside. Smoke is not having it. We need to move his body." "Nope, we're not moving him." "Fine. At the very least, we need to get up out this room, lock the door with him inside." They do that. And here come Cornbread. "Nigga, where you been? Where you been at?" So Cornbread comes and he's like, "What's going on, y'all?" And they all come to the door and they go to confront Cornbread because, "Where you been? You supposed to be watching the door. She came back in here and killed Stack. How the hell does that happen?" And so Cornbread is like, "Well, let me in to come help." And they're like, "What you need permission to come in for? You been in and out of here all night. What you mean let me in?" And so Annie, she can sense it. Something's off with him. "Why are you acting so jovial? Where you been? What's going on with you?" And he trying to dismiss Annie. "No, no, no, no. You talking to me right now." Because Smoke just lost his brother. You ain't gonna play on his vulnerability right now. You talking to me. So why can't you push past us and walk your big ass up in here? "Well, that wouldn't be polite, Miss Annie, now would it?" "Now we out here playing games." "Who's we, Cornbread?" Cornbread thinks that they need to focus on,
Being kind to one another.
and they still ain't buying it. Cause what you mean? He's like, "Fine, whatever, Cornbread." He goes to leave, but then he remembers the money that was owed to him. Actually, before that, "Well, Stack was my ride here. How am I supposed to get back?" "That ain't my problem," Smoke says. 'Cause Stack is dead. So what you want me to do? So then he's like, "Well, can I at least get paid what was owed to me?" Now, keep in mind, this was something that Stack and Cornbread had a conversation about. I don't know if Smoke knew the amount of money that was supposed to be paid or not paid to Cornbread, whatever. But Cornbread's there. hand at his side, beckoning for the money. So if he's doing this, that would give Smoke no choice but to. I mean, Smoke could have just threw the money out at him, but no, he's gonna hand him. He's a man of his word. He's a man of his. He's gonna hand him the money in his hand. Well, that was a mistake because then Cornbread takes the opportunity to grab Smoke out of the juke, but Smoke is a quick draw, shoots him in the side of his face. They both fall outside. Smoke gets up. Cornbread turns his head. We see the wound from where the bullet entered, and we see the other half of his face is kind of looks like a ground beef. That's the only way I can describe it. And he slowly starts getting up. They pull Smoke back into the juke. They lock the door. Cornbread dead, y'all. Not only is he dead, but he's a vampire. But they don't realize that he's a vampire yet. They just know Smoke shot Mary. She got up, ran out with no problem. Shot Cornbread. He got up, no problem. Then we hear some knocking. What's going on? Stack. Hey, y'all. Hey, I feel much better now. Could y'all let me out? We saw you die. Something is off. Something ain't right. Sammy goes to the door. Stack, is that you? Boom. He pokes a knife through the door. And I'm going to need people, like, if he poked a knife through the door, why y'all keep putting your eyeball up to this damn hole in the door? Please stop. But of course, Stack ain't going to stab his own brother in the eye. But he's beckoning for Smoke to let him out.
Open the door, Smoke! Let me the fuck out, or I swear, book out. I'm laying all you sons of bitches down, one by one.
So he breaks down the door. And the first person he tries to go for, because the thing is, vampires need to be invited in. Stack was turned while he was inside the juke, but he still had to leave. A lot of people, I saw somebody on thread ask, well, why did Mary leave if she was invited back in by Cornbread? And my theory is that she couldn't stay there much longer because the person who invited her in, Cornbread, had been turned. That invitation was no longer valid because the person who invited her in was now vampire. That's how I took it. So with Stack, he still needed to be invited in as well. But you notice when he comes out, he tries to get Smoke before he can even leave. But Annie comes and douses him with something. It's pickled garlic juice. The garlic repels Stack and he runs off. And that's when Annie lets everybody know
These ain't hates. They're vampires.